Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn, and I run the web services, online services, and other services around medcommsnetworking.com, where you'll find lots of information, resources, and services for people who work in and around the MedComms business, the global MedComms business, by which I mean medical communications, medical education, medical publishing, and so on. You'll find lots of activity going on there, and at the moment we're running lots of these Zoom webinars, which we've been doing for the last couple of years, and recording the results and placing those recordings on NetworkPharma TV, where you'll now find more than 250. We're heading towards 300 videos of one sort or another. So there's lots of great content if you're interested in MedComms, so do go and have an explore. These webinars are working great. They mean we can involve people from all over the world, and we're covering some interesting topics at the moment. Today, very straightforwardly, we've got 4 representatives from publishing companies who have come online again. This is a bit of an annual thing we're now doing. So there's an element of what did we say last year, what are we going to say next year about this one, but it's quite fun, and I'm absolutely delighted that we've got this gang, as I call it, gang back together again. So thank you everybody for joining us again this year. What we'll do to begin with is simply have some introductions. So I've asked each of them to talk to us about who they are, and importantly some of the stuff that has happened this year, and some of what's predicted to happen next year for them, if there's any new launches or new activities, whatever. So give us a summary of where you're at the moment and what's coming, and then we will open this up to a Q&A. So those of you listening to this, please, you've got a chat box, you've got a Q&A box. Use those text boxes to text in any comments, observations, questions, and so on, and we'll weave that into the discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to I'm going to go in alphabetical order, as always. So Caroline, you're first up.
Thanks, Peter. And hello, everybody. My name is Caroline Halford, and I'm the Digital Publishing Manager for ADIS, which is part of Springer Nature, the world's largest open access publisher. ADIS has 32 medical journals that specialize in publishing clinical research, review articles, and real-world evidence across all therapeutic areas. Our most famous journals include Advances in Therapy, Drug Safety, Infectious Diseases and Therapy, which has been incredibly popular this year, Targeted Oncology, and Diabetes Therapy. We're well known for our rapid publication service, which is 2 weeks peer review, acceptance to online in 3 weeks, which is standard across half of our titles and optional across the other half. But in terms of what's new with ADIS, what's happened in 2020, how to sum up our year, categorically for ADIS, it's been digital features. We have seen a huge increase in digital features this year. We've published more than double the amount that we've published in any previous years. The most popular features that we've received are video abstracts in terms of animated abstracts, talking head abstracts, and infographics and graphical PLS. So based on the success of these, this year we've launched the ability to be able to create digital features for authors or funders who prefer that service to be managed by the publisher. That's been really, really popular. Another new feature for ADIS in 2020 has been the launch of our podcast articles, which have been very well received. Actually, quite a new and exciting concept for us to make entirely digital articles. So they're a bit like commentaries where the authors can talk through a topical issue of the day, such as conference data or just something that's very newsworthy. These are indexed on PubMed, on SpringerLink, and we also stream them through the standard podcast streaming services like Apple Music and Google Play, things like that. So yeah, for 2020, it's been really exciting for us at ADIS to see digital features take off. Great to see authors, funders, and all stakeholders finally embracing digital content as a way to make data more digestible and understandable, especially at a time when the understandability of science is really important. So that's me.
Excellent. I'm on mute. I'm sorry. I couldn't. Why wasn't that working? Sorry, guys. Okay, that's the embarrassing bit out of the way. Okay, I'm on mute. Right, Caroline, thank you very much. I'm going to continue in alphabetical order. Hamish, you're next.
Great. Thank you very much, Peter. So my name is Hamish McDougall, and I'm the Business Development Manager at Sage Publishing. I have a number of different responsibilities here at Sage, including working on our digital extenders, and also working on direct commissioning, but primarily I'm here to be a first point of contact for you guys working in medcom agencies and pharmaceutical company publication teams. So if you have any queries at all, especially things like pre-submission inquiries or journal selection or anything at all, don't spend your time looking for someone specifically within Sage who can help you with that. Just send me an email or pick up the phone to me. I'll either resolve your query myself or chase it up internally and make sure that you get a rapid turnaround time. Sage as a company has a large portfolio of clinical medicine journals, close to 300 in total. We have a mixture of subscription, open access, society titles, proprietary titles. We have global titles, we have titles with local circulation, and our portfolio covers a whole range of clinical medicine. So whatever your specific needs are, we almost certainly have a journal to fit you. We have some really famous titles like the Multiple Sclerosis Journal, and we're very well known for our Therapeutic Advances Journal series, which is a series of close to 20 open access journals covering different therapeutic areas in clinical medicine. This year, we've now added a 17th and 18th title to our Therapeutic Advances portfolio, launching Therapeutic Advances in Reproductive Health and Therapeutic Advances in Rare Disease. Both titles had a really successful launch. We're on track to continue in that fashion next year. We're also looking at new journal launches next year, launching a title called Plasmatology, which we're very excited about, and we'll be able to tell you more about in the coming next few weeks. We also have some other launches planned, however, it's a bit too early to discuss those. In 2020, we've also been focusing quite a lot on improving our digital options, especially things like digital extenders like video abstracts, infographics, narrated video, and we've also been looking at plain language summaries and how best to implement them in our journal portfolio. And we've now released our guidelines around PLS. We've also been looking at our conference offerings and trying to figure out how best to leverage our journal platform to help boost conference coverage in a number of different ways, from hosting bite-sized video content online to publishing roundtable and symposia content in our open access journals. So we now have a plethora of options to help improve visibility of your conference and symposia material. And that's me.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Hamish. Continuing in alphabetical order, Jonathan.
Thanks very much, Peter. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jonathan Patience. I'm the commissioning team manager for Taylor & Francis, which basically means that I manage a team of commissioning editors who commission and manage a range of journals within the TNF medicine portfolio. Taylor & Francis Medicine encompasses a lot of well-known brands, including Dove Press, who most will know TNF acquired Dove around 3 years ago, and Expert Review, Expert Opinion, Current Medical Research and Opinion, also known as CMRO, Journal of Medical Economics, and Postgraduate Medicine. We're also well known for our rapid publication services and in-house editorial teams split by medical therapy area. So that team are always on hand to advise authors and medical writers on all aspects of publishing their work, and they can discuss the range of publications options available at TNF2, whether that's digital enhancements, our rapid publication options that can publish articles within 3 to 5 weeks from submission, with again a two-week peer review turnaround time, or whether that's to discuss upcoming themed issues. So if ever you do have anything to discuss relating to those, please do get in touch with me directly, and I'm happy to either put you in touch with the correct sort of therapy area focused commissioning editor, or I can answer your query myself. Taylor & Francis publish around 400 medical journals overall, and approximately 140 of them are fully open access. Notably, one of our most well-known journals, Journal of Medical Economics, has converted to fully open access this year. So that is going to mean that everything that it publishes from now on will be open access. Dove Press encompasses around 100 journals out of our open access portfolio. And this year, 8 of those journals obtained their first impact factor. So that's really great news for us. We're really happy about that, and hopefully we'll see more next year too. We also have an annual editorial calendar for special themed issues, and that has now been set out for 2021 as well. And that covers a range of different medical areas as well as drug development fields. So if anyone would like more information about how to submit their work to those, feel free to get in touch with me, and I can happily discuss that with you. You can also find out more about our journals at our website, tnfonline.com, and we also have a dedicated author services site available to assist. Mentioning the Author Services site, we are currently working on our plain language summary guidelines, which have now been finalised, and we're currently in the process of putting those up online. So watch this space, because we're hoping that those will be up online and available to view by the end of this year. And I'm also happy for anyone listening to connect with me on LinkedIn and ask any questions. One point I did want to make was around how COVID has affected the business and the industry generally in 2020. I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. But we do have a new service that we've recently launched, which is open access conference material supplements. And this is really to address the fact that many conferences have either been cancelled or moved to a virtual platform in light of COVID. And so the aim of that is really to help to expand the kind of readership to those materials. We're aware that that physical presence is no longer quite as possible as it was before. And we think this should be a really great solution to that. And that's all from me. I'm sure we'll discuss more about COVID shortly.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. And Joanne Walker, you are best to last, as it were.
Thanks, Peter. Hi there. I'm Joanne Walker, and I am the Head of Publishing Solutions at the Future Science Group. So we currently publish around sort of 34 journals across all areas of sort of medicine and science. And some of these titles are pure open access, and others are hybrid, offering an open access option. And some of these titles are quite well known, such as our Future Oncology Journal, and we also publish a sort of health economics journal, which is becoming more and more popular, and that's the Journal of Comparative Effectiveness Research. Alongside our journals, we also publish sort of 9 complementary digital hubs in areas such as oncology. So Oncology Central would complement Future Oncology, etc. And these websites are targeted toward HCPs, and they publish sort of short form and sort of multimedia content. So my role within FSG is to work across our journals and our digital platforms, helping to sort of find the right sort of platform to publish any content that you might have. So I'm the point of contact for any pre-submission inquiries. I also help sort of create new content ideas, and also just generally helping with our commissioning teams and sort of finding the right content that we can publish, maybe sort of looking at conferences, that sort of thing. So like Johnny said, COVID has had, obviously has had an impact on all publishers. Notably for us, we've just seen a huge amount of many more articles being submitted. We've seen about, I think of looking at the numbers, about 40% more articles submitted this year compared to last year. I mean, obviously of varying quality, and a lot of that has been COVID related, but quite a lot of it has sort of been across all areas of like oncology. And I think it just shows that how much more possibly how much more time, publication planners, publication professionals, and even authors have had to sort of get their research published. Another thing that that we've sort of been working hard on this year as well is our first read and publish deals. So these are focusing on our commitment to open access. So these are where participating institutions, sort of funders, universities, etc., they pay off a one-off annual fee that enables their researchers to read any sort of paywalled content that we publish, and then it also covers any open access fees. And under this deal, any of the researchers can publish in our journals under a CC BY license, and then not pay any additional sort of publication fees. And that that just sort of shows how we're sort of committed to a sort of sustainable open access option across all of our journals. And then personally for me, one of the big things that we've done this year is working on our, as everyone else has mentioned, on our plain language content. So as a sort of across all of our journals, we sort of currently offer 3 options to feature plain language versions of articles. So we, alongside just the articles that we publish, that we can have lay abstracts, which are sort of written by the authors and published within the journal itself. We also then publish plain language summaries as sort of supplementary materials. So somebody might have a sort of plain language version of their article that they want to then publish alongside the article, and that is available to sort of download. And then another thing that we've done, which is we've published our very first plain language summary of publication as a standalone article. So this is a normal sort of traditional journal article, but written for a lay audience. So the article has its own DOI and is discoverable on all indexing services, but it's written in a way for a lay audience, sort of be that non-specialists and patients as well. And it provides a summary, a sort of a concise summary with really nice graphics, and it's sort of laid out clearly to enable any sort of non-specialist audience to really understand what the original publication was all about. And this option is available for any articles that are published in any journal. So the first example that we published in Future Oncology was actually a summary of a clinical trial that was published in the Lancet. So I think that just sort of shows that, you know, the options are there for any article, and we consider these to be acceptable secondary publications according to the ICMJE guidelines. So it's all sort of ethical and above board, as they say. I think at this moment, we're sort of the only publisher currently that is offering this option to publish these sort of standalone articles. And, you know, and we're looking, you know, we've got a few more in the development for next year, and we're sort of looking forward to sort of how publication professionals are sort of considering patients in their publications sort of next year. And yeah, really looking forward to seeing how that evolves. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay, thanks everybody. And I think it's really interesting to hear from you all about what's happening, and giving us a sense of what's happening over the coming months and so on. So thank you very much for that. And let's just make sure now, and we'll do it at the end, we know that people who are watching this can contact you directly. You're the right people to talk to, and they can get some advice and guidance from you. So via LinkedIn is the obvious way to do it. I'd just like to start by facing up to this, which you've all touched on, so probably not go too far with this, but the whole sort of, you know, we're talking in December 2020, the COVID lockdown, the COVID year, how everyone describe it. I'm not so worried really about how you're working differently in terms of working from home and that sort of thing. I know it's all happening out there. I am a little bit interested in maybe just pursuing a little bit further the whole sort of what impact it's had on the publications business. And I think, you know, just to try and summarize, but what else can we talk about? You know, the digitization, digital stuff, the enhanced features, which, you know, if you look back at last year's chat or the year before's chat, or frankly, if we were doing it 7-10 years ago, we'd have had the same chat. Digital, you know, enhanced features are coming. They're coming, Peter. They're coming, Peter. And we used to discuss and have, you know, arguments about why it wasn't happening a bit quicker. But it does seem that's moved forward very, very quickly this year. And let's talk about that in a moment specifically. The sheer quantity of contributions is up. One of the things, and just a bit of clarification, because Joe, you specifically talked about that. I think 40% up. Just out of interest, is that's across the board? Are you seeing that increase specifically around the sort of trial data that the pharma companies are providing, or is that much more in the sort of the more basic research type areas? I'm just intrigued about this because one of the comments on a webinar last week with the publications managers was they hadn't seen so much of a big increase in publications being contributed, because actually a lot of people they're working with are very busy. The clinicians and so on are very busy doing something else, whereas they felt the thrust of the big increase in publications was more from basic research, where the laboratory people or whatever maybe would have been not so occupied and were clearing the backlog. Do you see what I'm saying? Just give us a little bit of a sense from that point of view in terms of where that big increase is coming from.
I think it's well, for us it's sort of, it is across the board really. There is that, I mean, you know, a lot of our journals don't publish the basic research, so it is that, you know, it is in those journals, but also in journals such as sort of Future Oncology, which publishes a lot of sort of real world evidence, real world analyses. We're seeing quite a lot of that data being published, more and more of that. I mean, whether it's related, you know, or whether it's just because the journals becoming more well known at publishing that type of research, you know, it's difficult to know, but we are seeing, yeah, sort of, it is really across the board. We are seeing a lot more being published. I mean, whether then next year it is going to then slow down because, you know, it could be that there might have been a backlog that's now being published, and then next year it's sort of going to plateau or sort of drop off. We know, who knows what might happen next year.
Well, exactly. And let's not catch ourselves out by predicting today what's going to happen next year.
Exactly.
But on that specific point, you were all nodding your heads at that. So yes, you're seeing it across the board, yeah, and certainly the trial data from the pharma companies, you are seeing an increase in that. Okay, everyone's sort of agreeing with that point, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I agree with everything that you said, Joe. Yeah, we've seen an increase across the board. I think we also saw a spike around June and July around conference season where the conferences have started to go digital. There was a real sense of, sorry, can you hear my phone going off in the background?
Don't worry, keep going.
Okay, good. Okay, so we had a real sense that actually publication plans were having to shift now. Instead of like having this big focus on exhibition of key data at conferences, with it all going virtual, there was such an overload of information for healthcare professionals to digest. Actually, pharma companies were going straight to primary publication. So they were still presenting the data, but there was more of a rush to get the primary results out there. Yeah, which we've seen a lot this year.
Okay, let's pursue that one for a moment, because I think Hamish, Johnny, you said the same thing. Joe, you also alluded to that you were specifically developing part of your platform to embrace that conference type publication. I mean, Caroline, is that what you're doing, or are you just seeing more stuff? You know, you presented that slightly differently to the way the others talked about that, I think.
We've seen, well, yeah, we've seen a lot more rushing to get the primary manuscript out there. We've also seen we do the same as what Taylor and Francis do, in the fact that we can sort of host conference content.
Okay.
We often do things like we often host the posters or audio sessions that complement the primary data. But yeah, we've seen an increase in that as well, as more of a hub, especially since the conference providers, we've had mixed feedback. Some conferences have done really, really well in terms of how they presented the data. Some, maybe their platforms haven't been as strong. So in that case, we've seen a lot more reliance on the established publishers' platforms as the main repository for that kind of data.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a blunt question, which again came up in a webinar last week. And I'm being slightly flippant about this, but we have, as a group, talked about this for several years. You know, why isn't there more of this digital enhanced feature and all the rest of it? And this year it suddenly seems to have exploded. So why has it exploded, really? I mean, where's the pressure coming from? Is it you guys suddenly actually going, actually, we can do more of this? Is it the MedComms agencies or the pharma companies going, we want to do more? Is it the authors, the investigators saying we have to? Is it the readership saying, we flipping expect it? Where's the pressure coming from? Because some of what we're talking about, we could have been doing 10 years ago, but it didn't happen. And then this year, it's just gone whoosh. What was the problem? Well, what was the problem? Anyone? Caroline, go on.
I just think we've had so many conversations about this year, and I think it's a mix of all those things coming together. I think COVID has been the perfect. I think we all need a push sometimes to push us over the edge, and to be very blunt, we've been able to publish digital features at ADIS for years now, and for several years there's been a reluctance, and I think sometimes that comes from the conservative nature of funders, and no one wants to be the first. Everyone's was worried about compliance, and then I think as soon as more digital content has started to come out, that makes everyone feel more comfortable. From the reader point of view, we've heard for years how overwhelmed our readers are. To pluck a number from the air, there's 1 million items added to Medline every single year. So if you think about that in terms of the load for healthcare professionals to keep on top of the data that they need to keep on top of to be able to treat patients effectively, that's a huge pressure. So we've been hearing for years that the readers want something really digestible, and I think now COVID has forced everything online. It's suddenly made everyone think, oh, actually, yeah, we can do this. A video abstract is literally just someone sitting in front of a screen like I'm sitting in front of you. So all those things, and I think with the digital conferences this year, I've heard a lot of that feedback, that it's just conferences now feel like homework. As much as the conference organizations have done a great job, it's like, at least when you're at a conference, you're out of the office, you're at the conference center, you're going to the sessions, you're asking questions, you're going to the booths, you're going to the poster sessions, and that's a really nice immersive way to be able to digest content. But now if you go online, you've not only got your desk work to do, but you've got to look at the session data. So it's almost like something's got to give, and this data is too important just to skim over. So that's where we've seen the rise in digital features. It's like, actually, I can watch a 2-minute video that explains it really nicely, and it's been the perfect coming together of lots of factors.
Okay. Jonathan, have you got anything to add on that specific sort of point? You're seeing the same thing at your end, presumably.
Yeah, I would say that we have seen an increase in it, and I would say that I agree with most Caroline's points there, in that I think that it helps that people are almost forced to consider those digital enhancements and consider other ways that they might be engaging with readers, especially now that conferences quite aren't as immersive an option as they were before. So I think people are looking to that as another way to kind of engage their readers. I think also, I think having a pandemic like this, is bound to kind of generate more public interest in medical research as well. So it may also be, a general shift towards people looking more into actual journal articles and being more, I think it being more publicly available or more publicly kind of in the public eye than in a way it has ever been in the past. So I think that has probably helped with it. I mean, I would say that with what we're doing with our open access conference material supplements, we're trying to help ensure that those materials still reach those same audiences, but we also have the option of materials being uploaded as supplementary material for those. So for example, you'd have like a poster extracts article, a presentation extracts article, which would be kind of a list of summaries of, for example, posters all around the same theme. But then you could upload slide decks, for example, supplementary material, and that kind of enhances the kind of understanding of that. And that we could also have video abstracts from speakers on those as well. So I think there's a lot you can do there to try and help kind of engage people in other ways.
Okay, so now we've opened up what seems like a tsunami of more content on top of what was already an information overload for us all anyway, sort of thing. Joe, I'm going to just, what's your observation? I mean, so we can chuck more content up there, all sorts, bite-sized, long bits, different whatever. Are we just overwhelming everybody? How do we help them find what they're actually looking for? Joe, I'm looking at you because I'm.
Yeah, sorry, I've just had to unmute myself. Sorry. I think that is something. Just, I mean, discoverability of these sort of bite-sized content, I think, is key. I know that Figshare has options. I think you can find some bits and pieces on there. And I mean, that might be something, for instance, for Medline. I think that would be a perfect opportunity for them to sort of extend their database and, to help people find bite-sized content, find an infographic, that sort of thing. I think that would be a natural step, is to have a big repository of this bite-sized content in whatever form it might be. And maybe one of the bigger publishers might be interested in doing that.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I think about in this sort of conversation is, that it's going back a while, but we used to show pictures at conferences of the GP with their pile of magazines, and it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And you'd get a magazine, and you'd add it to the pile, and it was like, how do we help them discover this stuff? And now it's like, that's just nothing. The amount of video content, article, audio, podcasts that they could sit and listen to, watch on, is ginormous. I mean, it really is becoming a little bit crazy, isn't it? And I just, it's great, but I just wonder about that GP sitting there and is now just ignoring everything. I just wonder how much of a challenge that is, and what can be done if you're a funder, if you're an investigator, if you're whoever wanting to get that information in front of your key person, and what are people actually doing to then, I mean, I don't know, Hamish, I'm just I'm fishing for some comment here. What are people doing to proactively go, look, we've got, this is an important paper and it's just being lost in this tsunami. I mean, what sort of techniques are you seeing for people to then take what you've done and take it to the audience, as it were? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think if you're talking about bite-sized content and video and things like podcasts, I think journal platforms in themselves are already designed for discoverability. So, I mean, they have been designed that way for people to discover papers. So you just apply the same principles to any other type of content. So whether that's podcasts or video, I think making them as easily discoverable as possible. So one thing that we offer some of our potential clients to do is to host videos directly on the journal homepages. So as soon as you log on, you can see the video right there. So it's easily discoverable. And then you can link that to a relevant paper. So once you actually click on the video, then the relevant paper will come up. And the same thing can be applied to podcasts, audio as well. But I think, Joe made a really, really good point about actually making these things discoverable in things like Medline and indexes. And I think, as publishing moves forward, there is no way that indexes will be able to ignore that. And it will actually have to happen, especially as video abstracts become the norm.
Okay, I'm being slightly flippant here, but I'm going to pin you down slightly, because what I'm thinking is it's all very well if this stuff is discoverable, but if everybody is just going, or more and more people are just going, there's so much out there, I'm not even going to take a look. So they don't get to the front of your web page where someone's put a video on the front or something like that. I was just hoping for a little bit of a clue as to what somebody was doing to try and encourage their readers to go and find it. It could be brilliantly discoverable, but they've got to go and find it. I'm hearing, I don't know whether I'm alone on this one, but in the last few weeks, literally, frankly, so I don't know whether I'm out of date or just ahead of everybody. But publication amplification technology I'm reading about, publication extender technology. What it seems to come down to is enhancements that we've been talking about for a long time, together with various ways, and linking with social media and the whole idea of whether we can, tweet something. And it's, as I say, I just want a bit of a feel from you as to what people are doing beyond the publication to help that discoverability, because it can be as discoverable as heck, but if nobody actually makes that move, or even knows it's there in the first place. So has anyone got a quick view on this, or is this just me talking to myself sort of thing?
If I can jump back in again,
Right.
I think, the enhancers that we're talking about are the best ways to make things discoverable. So, when we talk about it, we call it a manuscript visibility plan, and that includes things like the podcasts and the video abstracts. And I think, when we first started doing the video abstracts and the video bites and all the other things that are going around it, we went away and we asked research about, do these make a difference to visibility? And the metrics are really impressive. I think, like Altmetric scores are 140% higher, papers accessed 80% more frequently. And it's quite a large sample size as well. So I think, the enhancers in themselves are the way to make things more discoverable. So I think it's about having a kind of a holistic plan before you start. And that includes having the manuscript in discoverable places, but then having the add-ons as well.
Okay, Caroline, this is a bit of a pet subject for you. So I'm gonna go Caroline first and then come to you, Joe. Sorry, but you were nodding away then. It's a bit of a pet subject for you. So just talk just for a moment or two about that aspect of what.
Yeah. Everything that Hamish says is absolutely correct, because we also work with Research Square for the creation of our animated abstracts, and absolutely just the act of the act of creating a digital feature does make an article more accessible, because when you think about it, okay, you have a paper, we create a video abstract, okay, we'll embed that, we also add that to Figshare, Research Square will put that on YouTube and Vimeo, so that's 4 platforms just on its own. And when you think about how Google search engine optimization works, the more platforms something is hosted and talked about, the higher it is likely to rise to the top of Google. Most of our readers come to the content through Google now. So for sure, just having it there is one method. But I really like what Hamish was saying about having a holistic plan, because this is certainly what we've seen. I agree with you. There's so many articles published that I think you can't just rely on readers coming across digital content, but where we've seen the best impact is where we've worked together with authors and funders to create a holistic plan. So we plan on where it's going to be hosted. We put some social media behind every article with the feature to make sure that, you've got LinkedIn, you've got Twitter behind it, you've got Facebook in some instances. But we also really try and work with the authors, because they're ultimately the best place to talk about their research and share it, and that's where it's worked really the best. I would encourage anyone that's looking at doing a digital feature is to engage with the publisher, talk about a plan, talk about who you want to reach and how we can work together to achieve that audience, and don't just expect that putting a video on an abstract on a page is going to instantly bring readers. But work with us, because we want the same things that you do. We want it to be discoverable, and it is achievable. I think it needs more planning around it.
Okay, I always used to moan about the fact that there seemed to be an intent to publish the article and then you move on to the next article, and it was like I used to bang on about, but what's happening, is it reaching anybody, how is anyone measuring? And it seems that there's a lot more focus on that these days, which is great, and there's a huge amount more opportunity, but it needs a bit of effort. I guess is what we're all saying. Joe, you were trying to come in there. So Joe,
sorry, I'm just saying, I think it sort of, I always think that, content needs to be discoverable, but it also needs to be disseminated. So I think, as Caroline said, I think sharing it on social media, using, trying to get if the author's on social media, then, trying to get them to share it, especially on Twitter, using all hashtags, mentions, just, repeatedly tweeting a paper, having, if you've got a video, maybe you could have a short clip of the video on there, an image of a graphical abstract, that sort of thing, just really sort of thinking about how, again, we sort of, we can work with authors, we can, we're now offering the option as well in our papers to do a tweetable abstract. So, when you can just, suggest, a nice catchy post that you can then help, just really help just to share your article and just get it, just get it out there, as well as helping it to be discovered. So I think that's, that's really important as well, having that, that, as as everyone said, that plan, it's not just publish, it needs to be published and then beyond. So I think that's really important. Yeah.
I think we all agree on that one. I know it's nice to see there's more of a focus on that these days. And I'd like to move on. We're going to run out of time. I could talk about this all day, as you know, and maybe I'm talking too much at the moment anyway. But I wanted to make sure that we talk a bit about the PLS side of things, which is coming up in some of the questions that are coming in. Jonathan, I'm going to lead into you and then go from there. I noted the fact that at least 2 or 3 of you said something like, we're about to publish our PLS guidelines. We had a question come in quite early on about, can you explain a bit more what you're all talking about, because the terminology is different. Is there some standardization and so on? I mean, if you're all going to come out with your own guidelines, how are they all working together? I just wonder, again, each of you talking from your own point of view, what is really happening out there? What is PLS? I mean, plain language summary to me is fairly straightforward, but people still wrap it up with patient summaries and things. It's not necessarily. And what are your guidelines going to be saying? And are they all going to be the same or different? Jonathan, I'm going to start with you.
So yeah, that's a really, really good point. And it's something that has been raised several times over the past, kind of this kind of discrepancy between guidelines. So we have tried to, as you know, we do tend to attend the same sorts of conferences. We tend to attend ISMAP, and we tend to attend similar sorts of roundtables and discussions where these issues are raised. So we do roughly know what each of the individual publishers are working towards. So we do try to align as much as we can on those. I mean, from our perspective, let me firstly say, PLS, from our perspective, we're referring to a plain language summary. And that's distinct from a patient lay summary, because a patient lay summary is typically what you would expect on a clinical trial. So we really want to kind of try to make that distinction between a patient lay summary and a plain language summary. And the other thing to say about plain language summary is that it's not necessarily just for the lay audience, it's also for non-specialist professionals who may also be working in the field and may want to be reading up on that research. So there is kind of a slightly broader scope to it. So last year I mentioned, I think I mentioned it in this panel discussion actually, that we had a working group set up at Taylor & Francis to determine what our approach was going to be to these. And the work on that has come to fruition now. So we've now set up workflows internally that enable plain language summaries to be fully peer reviewed, to appear on the article hosting page, and to be indexed on PubMed. And we have kind of sort of determined the requirements by PubMed in order to be able to do that. So for example, it has to be less than 250 words in order to be indexed on PubMed. We also have a policy on what format these should take, and we try to make it so that if these are going to be going onto PubMed, we don't want any kind of formatting problems to occur between publication and then listing on PubMed. So we've taken all that into consideration. We've also we've learned a lot from Dove Press. As I mentioned before, Dove Press is part of Taylor & Francis, and they've been doing plain language summaries for several years now, quite a long time, and the uptake there is really great, and the feedback we receive about them is very good. So we've tried to use those as kind of a basis for developing our guidelines for the rest of Taylor & Francis. And we've also been looking into, so there has also been some requests to do longer plain language summary type files. So that might be like a 2 or 3 page PDF with infographics. So we had to have some discussion around how that could feature, and we have decided that can feature as supplementary material. So whatever the plain language summary is, we would always recommend submission of a 250-word plain language summary, and that can then go through to PubMed. But if there is an additional longer supplementary material that you want to have with an article, then we can do that too. And we'd suggest having some wording in the 250-word version that indicates that that is available. And all of that information is detailed in the plain language summary guidelines that we've put together. And like I said, that's currently in the process of being uploaded to our author services sites on our Taylor and Francis website. So that should be up for everyone to see by the end of this year.
Okay, cool. I'm going to move you on a little bit quickly. Sorry, guys, because we are going to run out of time. But I think this is a really important point. So I'm just going to run quickly around you. Hamish, just again, your view on what we've just been talking about there. What's the position at Sage?
I mean, I think it's a really interesting point, and yeah, like Jonathan said, we've all been at like many of the same working groups. I mean, I have to applaud the work that like Envision the Patient did, trying to sort of standardise PLS across all of the publishers and across the industry in general. I think the issue for us was that we found the guidelines a little bit prohibitive in terms of there was quite a lot to do, so we were worried that that would discourage people from actually submitting PLS. But as Jonathan said, we are, by and large, we have quite similar guidelines. I've seen the Taylor and Francis guidelines, and I've seen our own ones now, and they really don't differ that much. So I think as publishers, we are interested in keeping it fairly simple so that it's not prohibitive and fairly standardized across the board.
Okay, I mean, certainly I would vote for trying to keep it standardized. Joe, have you got a comment on this one? And indeed, you've gone a little bit further than some of the others with your single papers. So just a minute on that sort of thing, yeah?
Yeah, so we've seen that there's a really big demand for plain language summaries, and we were sort of closely watching the work that Envision have been doing, and then we sort of were given an opportunity to sort of think about doing a plain language summaries as plain language summaries of publications as their own right. So for articles, that they are the articles themselves, they've got their own DRI, they're citable, that sort of thing, and then, because we're a small publisher and just think, why not try it? So we just thought we'd try it. And I mean, it took about a year for it all to be developed. We had to do a nice template, that sort of thing. And then our first article was published in August. And yeah, I mean, it's gone really well. It's got really good readership. We had to come up with so many processes in the house to figure out how we're going to publish this. We've had to sort of forego the whole full text version of articles, because then that wouldn't give the audience the nice sort of pretty laid out version, which I think is what the benefit of a nice laid out plain language summary is. So for instance, anyone wanting to read the article, it's all free online, they're all published open access, but they're just forced to sort of download the PDF, so they get a really nice version. That's that's the main reasons of a PLS, is it really helps the audience, the reader, to sort of understand the article through nice graphics, etc., that sort of thing. And yeah, I mean, and then we sort of, throughout the whole project of this, we looked at, how are we going to do this? Were we going to look at other journals, which is something that we did think that any other journals any authors who wanted to consider PLS from other journals, from other publishers, we thought, well, why not consider doing them? And we don't mind linking out to other publishers, because any PLS that we publish then links out to the original publication. It's all indexed, they're all nicely indexed together on Medline, that sort of thing. So it's just something, and as these develop as well, we're even considering doing plain language summaries that aren't summaries of original publications. The plain language summary is an article of its own right. So it's just so there's so many different ways that this can go, and we're just going to sort of see how it develops.
So again, a huge amount more activity than even this time last year, sort of thing. But there and some standardization, some guidelines, but the opportunity for confusion, basically, as people do slightly different things, which is the thing that a couple of the questions are touching on, sort of thing. But Caroline, I'm going to ask you to wrap this up. I'm going to push you to be a little bit quick, but to come in as the final comment, sticking with this PLS stuff. What's your view from where you're sitting, just to draw this conversation to a whole? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the other panelists in that I think we're still trying to sort of finesse what is a plain language summary, and I agree that it would make sense that we all have sort of broadly the same definition so that there's less confusion. From the ADIS perspective, our emphasis, we do have some guidance on the instructions for authors. We've not got loads. We're working on more detailed guidance at the moment, but we try not to be too prescriptive. because it is really hard to really pin down what exactly is the right level of content. So for the ADIS perspective, our view is it just needs to be a plain language version. We're not really trying to reach patients. From the ADIS perspective, patients are not our primary audience, but we are trying to make sure that they're jargon free for either generalist healthcare professionals or educated members of the public. So that's our main emphasis. They're always indexed on PubMed if it's a text version, and that's what we're trying to aim for.
Okay, guys, look, I could talk to you all afternoon, but I need to wrap this up for today. So it'll be very interesting in a year's time, because I think this is, this is really interesting what's happened with PLS and the whole area around it. Maybe we'll come back in a year's time and we'll review where we're at. Meantime, this is the year when digital enhancements and stuff went completely bonkers. So that's really interesting to hear. Can I wrap this up? For those of you watching today, don't run away if you don't need to, because we're happy to talk to the top of the hour, and there's still some questions here we can pick up, very specific questions. But that's great. For the purpose of the recording, I'm going to close it down. I'm going to say to those of you listening today, but also anybody listening to this video later, the guys here, very happy to hear from you. LinkedIn is the obvious place to reach out, very quick and easy. So please do make contact, have a chat about all this stuff. And a huge thank you to you for joining for another lively panel discussion today. So on that note, I'm going to do, this is a thing now, as you know, we all give a little wave as we say goodbye. So thank you very much, everybody, and talk to you soon. Bye.